Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. The show is also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check it out on your favorite app, wherever you find it best suited for you. You can also Google the show on Google and look up PWD Allies. There's so many variations of checking out the show. I really encourage you to subscribe, like, and whatever you need to do to stay up to date on the show. And if you'd like to sponsor the show, feel free to reach out to Neil or myself. Today, I have a special announcement actually from my editor-producer regarding some content on the upcoming shows. So stay tuned on that. I also have a e-petition that's out there right now that's circulating around that I got going with Neil. Neil and I actually produced a e-petition to the House of Commons. So I'd just like to mention that before we introduce our guest for today. It's an e-petition to give a disability emergency response benefit to the House of Commons while we wait for the indefinite delay of the Canada Disability Benefit that was supposed to be rolled out 4 years ago, but it's only going to go up to only recipients who have a DTC up to $200, or the federal government's still tying it to that DTC. I don't know why. I mean, it should be all inclusive. Every Canadian citizen with a disability should be receiving that. So there's a petition out that I put out there, and I want to get it. The goal is to 1,000 signatures by the end of July. So let's get this done.
Yeah,
at least get up to 500 anyway.
You need to get up to 500, and I think we're over that, a little bit over the halfway point now, so it's getting up there. Yeah,
it's getting there. And so with that being said, I'm going to pass the programming announcement over to you, Neil, and then pass it back to me, and I'm going to introduce our guest.
Yeah, okay. We kind of mentioned this on the last podcast as well, but I just kind of wanted to get it in people's brains. Is for the panelist shows now, we're trying something a little bit different because like we've mentioned this before, like back when you were on Twitter Spaces, Twitter Spaces back in the day, I mean, it was basically a gathering. It was actually more of like a gathering space, right? I mean, you used to call it the show, and that's I mean, that's fair. But really, it was more of a gathering place, and a show was kind of secondary almost, right? Or the fact that it was going to be re-released as something that people would listen to again was almost a secondary thing, right? And so we never really cared that there was, like, say 50 people on the call or more, or 100 people on the call, and everybody was over talking and things like that. And it wasn't really an issue. But now that this is, like, your show is actually a show now, and it's more of a podcast, we really have to be conscious of the fact, especially also that more people are listening to the podcast only through audio, like the audio stream only. And we're getting feedback that it's distracting to have more than 4 voices on the podcast at once, because it's too many voices. Like, it's too hard for a person to follow it. So what we're going to be doing with the panelist shows, I mean, it was great when we did it. Like, I still love the panelist shows. Having like 8 of us or 9 of us on I mean, it was great. But the fact that people are listening to it more and watching it more and consuming it more means that we have to kind of tailor it so that it's easier to listen to and people want to listen to it. And so to do that, we're kind of downsize the panelist shows. Like, you know, Dan is a longtime panelist, but what we're going to do going forward, most of the time now, is limit it to either one-on-one panelists, like we're doing today with Dan, or doing the dynamic duos like we've done before, you know, and having Dan and somebody else, or, you know, and I think it'll make it easier for people to listen to, easier to digest, like less over talking, easier to follow, that kind of thing. That's why we're doing it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Neil, on that. And I just want people to stay tuned in and focused on the on our shows and the audio podcast and streamlining it. We'll see how that goes. And if we need to tweak things accordingly, we will. We'll keep everybody updated on that. Today, I'd like to introduce Dan Trays. Dan, thank you very much for joining us today. Dan's going to be talking about disability and homelessness, like advocacy, disability, and homelessness and lived experience. I mean, Dan knows all about that, and so I'm going to get Dan to jump in right here, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing?
We're
How you
good.
doing, Dan?
Yeah, hey, listen, apologize to the crowd ahead of time for any noise pollution in the background. We got some construction going on here and stuff. And I got a mouthy Mexican roommate called Austin here that likes to bark at the workers. So, yeah. But, yeah, as per here, it's actually a nice day out, too. So I just wanted to start off by reminding our homeless community, like, get indoors, get some shade under trees, and hydrate yourself lots, man. You need water at this time because you don't know it, but it could hit you at any time, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, so like that's why things like splash pads are important and such. You know, keep the kids are on holidays here now, so you know, keep everybody hydrated and cooled off. And yeah, just always good to talk to you guys, man. And just to touch on your reformatting and such. You know, it's a time and place for everything, right? And the group talks are great because they get information out there in the masses. But it's especially been taught to me over the last year that people learn things within the first 10 minutes and within the last 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So it's great what you guys are pointing out there, and look forward to the future of the show.
Yeah, good.
Oh, absolutely. And anyone who's listening to the podcast right now, I also apologize if you hear a lot of noise in the background. We have a company coming in today doing carpet cleaning throughout the whole building, and there was no notice in advance. So saying, well, hey, the carpet cleaning company is going to come back and clean the whole building. So if you hear any noise in the background, that's what's going on there. But Dan, you know, getting back to about being hydrated and stuff, yes, it's so important to drink lots of fluids before you start feeling the symptoms of being dehydrated. If you're going to be going out and about, anyone, just definitely have lots of water. Definitely that's going to quench your thirst. It's going to keep you hydrated. Because yes, you're right, Dan. I mean, it can hit anybody at any time, and it's just like having a disability. Like you know, it could be diagnosed or not diagnosed. I mean, it can hit anybody at any time with that too. And having any underlying conditions, being hydrated will help you if you're outside in the heat. And we've had a lot of heat out here. We had a heat wave just recently. It's now kind of moderated down to a somewhat comfortable level. I'm not sweating like crazy going, oh man. Yeah. How's things out in your area, Dan? It must be pretty hot out there right now.
Well, actually, that's a perfect segue to stuff because like out here today is not too bad. Today, I think it's 23, 24 degrees. But the previous couple of days where we had a couple of days over 30 and hit touching 40, right? It brings to light, hopefully for people, the importance of like addressing things like homeless encampments. Senior citizens that might be wandering the streets, not realizing, like you said earlier, that they have an issue going on. We just had a TTC worker notice a problem with a lady on a streetcar the other day, right? And she recognized it and took care of her. And so it's really important for that. One thing that really bothers me about these homeless encampments and people that are homeless is that here in Toronto, and across the country for that matter, I think it's being ignored for a different narrative of other issues. And that's where we have the problem here. As anybody that knows that, City Hall or the legislatures or the Parliament Hill, people give deputations and such within groups and singularly. And it's got to get to the point where they all work together, because if there's 15 different stories going on, you're never going to accomplish anything, whether it be a motion or get something passed through the legislature. It's never going to happen, right? So what we got to focus on going forward is the services, and try to focus on it from first at a local level, because if you don't have your municipality working together, you're not going to have your province or the country working together.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and there's so many reasons why the homeless camps are escalating more and more. I've been hearing that on the news and seeing that in person. Even downtown Victoria, British Columbia, where I am, Dan, we have a huge homeless camp forming. As anyone who can recognize the area or knows the area, listening to the podcast later on, down on Pandora Street. I mean, it's like a huge tent city. And there was a huge police presence last night. And I heard a bunch of sirens. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, that's just downtown. And they called in, I think, 4 different police departments to deal with homeless problem. There was an individual who attacked and this is really sad. The homeless person attacked a EHS, emergency health response paramedic, and the fire department. They attacked them, and so they had to call for backup. And they brought in 4 different police forces in order to calm down, I guess, the crowd of what was going on. And I won't get into specifics because I don't know all the details, but they told the public that there was no threat to the public. It was all under control, so they cleared it up. But again, I mean, there's a lot of underlying reasons why the homeless camps are escalating. Is it because people are priced out of housing? I mean, everyone has a story for homelessness. There's so many dynamics, and there's just too many things to pile in of why it's happening. But there has to be a solution. And you're right, Dan. Like city council, they have to actually take control of it. And if they need backup, they need to talk to the provinces. They need to talk to the federal government. I mean, when I grew up, in my hometown, I never saw one homeless person.
No, I know. You and I were talking just on the phone the other day, and we were actually talking about homelessness and just not even not even thinking like Dan's going to be on the show tomorrow. Let's talk about homelessness. We just were talking about homelessness, and like I made the point, like, back when I was younger, like homelessness in Vancouver was just stayed in. It was the downtown core. It was like there was one strip in the downtown core. That's it. Yep. And now, like in my own building, and again, I feel really bad for people that are homeless. I put that on record. Like I feel really bad. Like it's not anybody's fault that they're homeless for the most part, right? So I feel really bad, but. Like just to take my own example, like in my own condo here, I think right now it's not too bad, but last year, we were having, there was about 4 people that were actually breaking into our underground, like actually breaking into the underground and like in a confined area that they're not supposed to even get access to. They were getting access to it. And then like shooting up drugs there and defecating and putting their garbage there and and they were lighting fires. So it was about 3 times. 3 times we had to call the fire department because there was fires down in the garage. So you have like this is a small condo, so there's like 40 families in this condo. Like there's only like 39 units or like in this condo, right? But you got 40 families that are their lives are being threatened because of like potential fires that are being started by homeless people down in the garage. And again, my heart goes out to these people. It does, but the fact that the governments are just kind of going, oh well, not our issue. Like we'll just pass it off to condo owners, and they'll deal with it. And and that's the other thing, was we did have to deal it by ourselves. We had to spend, it was 3 or 4 times we had to spend, I think it was $400 or $500 each time to just dispose of all this shit and garbage down there. 4 times, so that's maybe I don't know, say $2,000 in garbage costs, and to have the needles properly disposed of, so they're not going to harm children down there or whatever. I mean, it's a big deal. So just that one instance of 4 homeless people breaking into our underground, that's $2,000 that was passed on to homeowners, and you're passing on potentially threatening the lives of 40 other families in the condo because of a fire breaking out. I mean, we're talking serious shit here. It's as much as I feel bad for homeless people, it's serious shit. And the government's got to wake up and realize, you know what, we can't keep passing the buck off to owners and having owners deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
So since you owe $40 to the swear jar already, so I'll just interject quickly if I can.
Yeah, there we go.
Two of the major fucking problems here, okay? And we're going to try not to get you canceled, right? But 2 of the major problems is, number 1, mainstream media. We have to change our attitudes with regards to how we not only treat homeless people, but also PWD, persons with disabilities. Just as an example, and I won't get into these protests, but just as an example, there's been various protests that were let to go on for weeks and weeks and weeks at various properties across the country, and quite frankly, across the world, that never got touched. But when these homeless encampments spark up, there's violence, there's police arrests, there's everything, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing we have to do is acknowledge the fact that the people are there. They've been there, they're not going anywhere. And unless you're some kind of fucking asshole that like Doug Ford, who just wants to keep seeing people die, then just fix the problem. We have all said it a bunch of times. When you fix these issues, you will save costs on health, you will save costs on housing, policing, nutrition, food. When we just fix these problems, and I'm not saying they're minor problems, but they can be fixed right away, because I've been there and I've started to do that process, right? All those years that I worked down at City Hall, it made me the saddest, just for the simple fact, not because I was frowned upon because of my attitude or the way I approached things, but it made me sad because I knew the bullshit that was going on wasn't conducive with what the public knew about the homeless situation. It's a simple fact that homelessness is a business. If you get rid of homelessness, you get rid of all those nursing jobs, all the police jobs, all the hospital jobs, security jobs. You have to come to some kind of balance. But the problem is getting so large that we desperately need people with lived experience to go to the table and let these fuckers know what's up. And that's what I personally intend to do in the very near future.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. There's a problem with the homeless encampments that's really it's really bothersome that I hear on the news, and I've actually seen it, witnessed it myself locally here. I'm not sure if it's happening. I'm sure it is happening in your area too, Dan, where they call it clean sweeps, and the city's coming by with their bylaw officers. They're taking the individual's belongings and they're throwing it into a truck, and they're pushing them on, and then they come back, and then the people set up shop again, and they keep doing it as a rotation basis. Mm-hmm. Those are people's belongings. Work with the individual, right? Yeah. Rather than just their belongings. Where are they supposed to put their belongings? And just we push them on to somewhere else. Well, then it's like saying not our problem. They go away.
Yeah, and another really good example of this, Brent, was it 2 years ago we had the heat dome here in BC? Was it 2 years ago or last year?
2021.
Okay, yeah. And again, I don't like. I'm not about to throw John Horgan under the bus, because again, I love John Horgan. I thought he was one of the best BC premiers we've had in the province in a long time. But just before, I think it was just before he. Well, I don't know. I've lost track of time now. But one of the things he said during the heat dome was in the SROs, BC Housing and the SROs specifically. Remember, there was a bunch of people that died. There was a bunch of people that died, and I hate to say this, but out of John Horgan's mouth, he said, well, that's what happens when people get old. That's what happens when people. And I mean, that's really tone deaf. As much as I love John Horgan, that is extremely tone deaf. You can't say, well, that's what happens when people get old. You know what really happened there is that there was no air conditioning, so people baked to death. That is what happened. It had nothing to do with the fact they were old. It was that people baked to death because the government says, who cares? This is an SRO. Who cares? That's what really happened. People baked to death. That's the truth. It wasn't that they're old. It was that they baked to death.
They didn't have the air conditioning, and after that, the province decided to roll out the free air conditioner program through BC Hydro. If you qualify for it, because you actually have to have it based on the household income again. And
more pink unicorns, Brent.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask Dan about the homelessness too. Is like, how is that happening in your neck of the woods, Dan? Like, are they doing like claim sweeps and stuff? Like,
so I get the sentiment about what you're saying about Mr. Horgan, right? Because he's somebody that you guys know.
Yeah.
Throw him under the fucking bus, man, because that's the only way you're going to get something accomplished. Everybody that knows me knows that I've known our premier for over like 25 years now. Okay, is he an asshole? Absolutely, but that's exactly what's happening here. Just for an example, the other day, a counselor friend of mine called me up and said, Dan, we got somebody in the bus shelter by your house. Do you know who they are? Blah, 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 blah. So I went over and checked it out for them. It was a former resident of our building taking up shop in the bus shelter because he had nowhere else to go. And that's exactly what they keep doing. They keep, we have a premier, and I'll say a premier because I don't want to say his name. His name, like gut wrench every time I hear it. But he's worried about moving stupid shit like the Science Center. He's now trying to make the beer stores convenience stores and convenience stores beer stores. We have a long-standing strike with our liquor control board going on right now. I think it's going on a week or two now. And you guys can look up, go look up a lady named Colleen McLeod. She's like one of the front-running negotiators for the deal that's going on. But he's worried about all this stupid shit when exactly what you guys just said is happening. The same thing is happening here. There's people like just basically like rotting and cooking to death on the streets. Mm-hmm. We have various programs that do great work around the city. The Out of the Cold programs we have here, and even various city-run initiatives are doing good. But that's exactly all they're doing. They're basically taking a car with two people in it that will talk to them as quote-unquote counselors. Then as you're saying, they take a truck with two other people in that, veer it out. Next thing you know, a week later, it's back there. Where are the programs for these people to go to? Why are we worried about it? Not flabbergasted me. It kind of angers me and stupefies me at the same time because, like I said, he's trying to take convenience store stuff and put it into the beer stores to make up for that loss. And he's trying to take the beer store stuff and put it in the convenience stores. What the fuck is going on in your brain, man? Like, what's going on? The same people I see homeless back in the day when I was homeless are some of the people that are still alive, are still down there on what we call Skid Row. Mm-hmm. Okay? And speaking of Skid Row, like shout out to my friends there. Their name's Dos Brujas. Do an excellent job online. Go check those Twitter spaces of Dos Brujas. What's up, guys? But it's the fact that they don't care. He doesn't care about it. And I say him, that whole government as a whole, and as we hear it, other governments across the country, unless it benefits them in one way or another, unless it garners them more votes, it's never going to change. We've had the same problems here for the same amount of time, but I waited 12 years for housing. Why should somebody have to wait 12 years for a basic human right? Now, I'm not saying go out and hand it out like candy, but just as that example, back to your original question, referring back to the guy that I went and checked on in the bus shelter, that person lived here for 13 years and was just cast aside. And I don't know what the problem was. There could have been an issue. There could have been some violence or something. I don't know. But that person is just cast aside now to die in society. What fucking kind of country are we when we're letting this shit happen? But yet we're helping each and every other place out. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's handing the federal government seems to be handing out money like candy out to other countries, and just like a major amount, but not helping their own citizens to make sure they have all the proper, adequate needs. Like, I mean, your standard of living. And I don't just call it basic needs. I mean, call it the standard of living, where you've got.
And to be clear, we do need to do that, though, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
we do need to do that.
We do need to do that. Yes, I was going to say that if you weren't going to say that, Dan.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we do need to help out the countries, but we all at the same time we need to help out our citizens too. Absolutely, I agree with you totally on that. I mean, the standard of living, like that, you have a roof over your head, you be able to basically your cost of living up, your standards of what you need. And when those needs are not being met, we got a serious freaking problem, because people are going homeless. And actually, that's a good segue of kind of branching. And Neil and I have had this discussion recently, and I'm still foaming at the mouth. I'm just livid. It was called for BC Housing, Neil. What the information that I learned, Dan, I want to get your view on this. You don't have to comment if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable, but it might be something similar going on in Ontario there. So the housing provider that British Columbia has, it's called BC Housing, and it's an umbrella of services for citizens in the province. Now, it basically branches to senior citizens, people with low income, like single mothers, single fathers, and that's called the rental assistance program. The seniors one is a seniors. It's I always get this messed up. It's called Safers. But it's basically it's a supplement for seniors, and it's the same kind of criteria that single mothers, single fathers can have too. People that are in subsidized housing under a non-profit or for-profit umbrella under BC Housing, they can have 30% of their income goes to rent. Now, it's based on the household income. Now, that category is for all of those sectors. Now, one thing I learned just recently, because I was curious, a few people in my neighborhood had asked me about, well, the rents are so high. Market rents are extremely high, as we all know across the country. Market rents are way above a person's actual income, what they can actually afford, and they keep going higher and higher. So I inquired, and I said, if a person wanted to get into BC Housing, and they're a person with a disability, and they have a roommate or a friend or maybe someone that they know, can 2 PWD get into the housing? And the gentleman I spoke with, Dan, basically told me they have to meet the guidelines and the policy under BC Housing. I said, okay. I said, again, and I said to him on the phone, I said, again, 2 PWD, they can either be friends, roommates, maybe they just know each other, maybe it's a friend of a friend of a friend who basically just wants to have cheap housing, they just want to live under the same household. And he goes, no, they have to actually be in a relationship. They have to be a couple, or they could be married. They can have maybe there's a child involved or a family. They said because it has to meet the criteria or guidelines of the policy. And I said, so there's no guarantee. He goes, well, why would you keep saying the word guarantee? There is no guarantee. He said, Bud, I'll set this very straightforward to you. There's a 0% chance if a person does not meet those criteria, they will not get into housing. I said, I heard there's at least a 10-year plus waiting list. It's a couple-year waiting list. I go, no, unfortunately, the recent stats actually say there's at least 10 to 12 years waiting list to get in. He goes, well, the government's making all the announcements of getting PWD or people on low income into housing. And I said, and great. I said, I really echo that. I think that's a great idea about building housing. I mean, we need housing to get people housed rather than homelessness. I mean, we need to get people out of tents into homes. People need homes. I mean, what do? We not provide homes to people? And he goes, right. We need to follow that criteria.
When you're talking about the two PWD criteria of like, it has to be two people in a relationship and all this stuff. It's like, it feels like it's a joke, right? It's like two PWD walk into a bar, you know, and here's the punchline, you know, and it's just ridiculous, the whole thing.
But I told myself, what if they're not in a relationship? So you have to, they have to be forced into a relationship. Is that what I said? That's what I'm kind of gathering. He goes, you're putting words into my mouth, sir. That's not exactly how it works. Yeah. And I go, well, that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And that's why things like violence is on the uptick for people with disabilities too. Is they get trapped in abusive relationships. You know, women of course too. But if you have a disabled woman, in particular, you can get some really ugly situations of abuse, and you can't escape it because the system is set up in a way that you have this dependency on the other person.
Well, I knew a person, before I go to Dan here really quickly, I'm going to throw this in here because it's a good segue. It kind of branches right into that. I knew a person who actually was in BC housing at one time, was actually under a co-op housing. And he was a good friend. I had gone to school with a friend of mine at the time. Knew this young lady, and I knew who she was, and she had moved in with another PWD, and unfortunately he was extremely abusive to her, and they both lost the housing, but they knew each other, but they weren't in a relationship, but they got forced under because of the policy to basically be in a relationship, and they didn't want to be in a relationship, and they had to be under one file. Yeah. And so again, that goes back many decades. So it tells me that policies have never been changed. It's just copy paste, and it's based on household. It should be based on the individual, so that if for some reason a bad situation happens or they're fleeing violence, they can now walk away and still have their income, where they can now go into a different kind of housing setting. And so that's what I want to see change going forward. I see government, I like to see change happen. I like to find solutions to the problem. And this is a solution. You need to base it upon the individual. I'm not saying don't build housing for PWD. I'm saying it needs to be based on the individual, and so that we can get more people housed rather than unhoused. And that is the problem, is that I've talked to people in 10 cities, and they tell me that is part of the problem. That is, there's unique situations, but that is one of them that I'm hearing on ground level. Dan, over to you.
I just wanted to punch my wall when I heard you say they're forcing you guys to be in relationships to have an apartment. Yeah. What the? I know. This is a moment for what the actual fuck? Like, what's going on here? See, here in Ontario, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm going to load that shit up for the end of the month. You know, I haven't been in a relationship in 13 years, so, right? 13, 14 years, right? I don't think I'm going to be in one, quite honestly, right? But when I hear the horror stories of people that have had to be separated just because of the fact that they're both disabled and they're on a fixed income, and I'm going, what the hell? What, you know, we don't have a problem shoving 19 people into a dormitory on bunk beds and calling that a shelter, but we have a problem letting people live together. Do these retards, sorry, I shouldn't use that word, my apologies. Do these idiots in government currently not understand that if they put PWDs together, people with various mental health issues or addiction problems or whatever, that they can actually benefit from it, that they can help each other, that maybe one day Sonia doesn't feel like getting up, but Brent can go and do her shopping for her. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, this is the problem. They don't have the lived experience like we all have. Like, just for an example, one of my friends from out in Nova Scotia was wondering today about how to properly get campgrounds accessible for everybody. And I think she was asking me from the perspective of a person in a wheelchair, right? And that's the only way we're going to get things fixed, is networking like that together, and then having somebody with a strong voice, a bunch of people, not just a somebody, but a bunch of people with strong voices to go to the table together and say, like, what's yours now, Evie or whatever? Hey, Evie, or hey, Ford, or hey, Olivia Chow. Like, this is what the fuck's going on. Can you help us, please? Because until that happens, like, you're going to be going around and around and around. My future plans are very simple, man. My future plans are August 1st. There's going to be an announcement coming. And I hope you all watch. I haven't figured out what platform I'm going to do it on yet, but it's going to happen August 1st around 12 p.m. And it's not going to be a spectacular. It's not going to be because it's me. It's for fucking all of us. Because it seems that for now, groups here, especially here centered in Ontario, are all fighting for good reasons, but they're starting to fight each other. And that's not going to get anything accomplished.
Yeah.
So to come to the table with actual lived experience and focus and know that we're not going to get everything that we need or want, but we have to get something now. I'm not talking about getting crumbs, but I'm talking like the CDB, for example. I told you guys at least 2-3 years ago that this wasn't going to happen. It's going to be an election issue. And look where we're sitting. A bunch of people got $6 a day, whoop-de-fucking-do, while somebody is walking away from the job with a full pension just because he stood up and said, "Through you, Mr. Speaker." Come on, man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that goes to where my conversation I had with the housing provider, I hung up the phone. I literally hung up the phone on the individual because the person kept saying, "Well, you're using the word guarantee." I said, "Well, I'm trying to get an understanding here. So you're telling me that 8 people, 9 people can live in a household?" He goes, "Right, but they all would have to fall under like a relationship." I go, "Okay, so 8 or 9 people are all supposed to have a relationship with each other in order to qualify?" I said, "So there's no guarantee." He goes, "Zero. Sir, I'm going to tell you," he says, "once and for all, a 0% chance that if they are not in a relationship, they will not meet the criteria." I go, "Okay, this system is messed up." I said, so I went back. I said, "Let's go back into history, sir." And he tried talking, and I said, "I'm not done talking." I said, "Let me finish what I'm saying." So I wouldn't let him get a word in edgewise. I go, "You see, sir, I actually do a podcast. I invite you to come on to the podcast, and we can have an adult discussion, one-on-one." And he declined it. I'll decline that. I go, "Okay, well, so you and I can have a discussion now." So what I actually said to him on the phone was that when people need to have housing, they need to have a system that's modernized. It needs to meet their needs, not what the government needs or what the government says that they want to have happen. And he goes, "If you don't meet the criteria, you don't have." I said, "See, your script is actually getting old. It needs to be modernized." He goes, "This was actually provided by the government at one time." I go, "Okay." So I said, let's go back memory lane. I said, "Do you remember Shane Simpson? He was the minister in charge of social development and poverty reduction." "Oh, yes, I know Shane." I go, "So do I." I said, because I went to his town hall meetings when he was the minister. And I remember him saying at the time, "You got to do what you got to do to make it happen. In order, you have to have up to 8 people in a household." He goes, "Huh?" I go, "Yeah." So he even said that. Now, I said, is that if those people are not in a relationship, they should actually meet that criteria. I said, "How about Nicholas Simons?" "Oh, Nick, yeah." I go, "Yeah, I know who Nicholas is too." Nothing changed. Sheila Malcolmson, current minister, and now we're going to be going into elections, so who knows if she's going to be the current minister. Again, Sheila, this message is for you. Can you please get BC Housing to change the policy so it's based on the individual, not household? If 2 PWD or maybe a bunch of them, if it's a 2-bedroom, say a 2-bedroom BC Housing unit or a co-op housing, and you got bunk beds in there, if people need housing, let them pay the rent. I mean, they can all split the cost.
Yeah.
It's more money in their pocket, more money that goes into the community. They can support local businesses. If they cause a big problem, I mean, hopefully they don't. And I'm nothing on nobody saying that people are going to cause problems. But I mean, give the person the benefit of the doubt. I mean, give them a chance to have housing. They can put the money in and support each other. Maybe they be there as friends to help each other out. I mean, isn't that what we're all supposed to be about? Is to networking with each other and helping each other in society as citizens, rather than pinning each other. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Brent. So if I'm understanding this correctly, Neil knows what's coming. If I'm understanding this correctly, if I say come out there to BC, I'm on disability, you're on disability, Sonia's on, Neil he's got his son and whatever, and we all decide we're going to get like whatever, a fucking 7-bedroom house, and we can do it with our incomes. They won't let you unless we're all sleeping together?
Yeah, no.
They would basically classify it as a household income where then your income would now exceed the actual threshold amount overall, and they would now narrow it down to maybe 1 or 2 people as long as it doesn't go over the threshold. I'll give you an example. If a threshold is at $32,000, okay, and your income exceeded, say 2 PWD, it exceeded over $32,000, now everybody else now has to go.
Yeah.
I actually had that happen with my mom one time. God rest her soul, Dan. My brother, myself, and my mom were there. My mom had to go onto a senior's supplement at one time, and she didn't even know what that was because she felt that the cost of living was starting to go up then. And so because I was PWD, my mom's a senior supplement. My brother is a professional painter. He built houses too. So he got into carpentry too, like building stuff. But because his income was way, way too high, and the government wanted to know all incomes in the household, his income exceeded way above it. So now it pushed the income over to like pretty close to like $50,000. Mm-hmm. So because of that, one of us had to go. So my mom said, well, Brent needs to stay. My brother can take care of himself. Brent needs to stay with me. So I had to stay with her. And the government actually said, as long as we don't keep increasing the rates too high, because if we increase it too high, then either his income's going to exceed yours, and one of you are going to have to go. Well, you'll stay there, ma'am, but he'll have to go. That's how bad the system is screwed up.
So in that situation, why wouldn't they just adjust your rent amounts then? Why wouldn't they just raise them up or down based on the income?
Yeah, and because
that's what we do here. Sorry, Brent, I have a delay, so I'm sorry I cut you off there, buddy.
Okay.
Well, basically, to answer your original question, like 3 hours ago, before I went on a little tear, like here in Ontario, I think the way it works is that you're allowed to make whatever, I think it's $1,000 a month, above and beyond and such. I'm not sure on the couple situation. Minnie might be a good person to ask about that, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't been in a couple relationship, right? The way my income works here, and I'll feel free to share, right? I don't care. Like I'm in an RGI unit, but I don't pay the regular amount. So when I was working, I was paying about $600 more than I would on social assistance. So they base it exactly how you said, 30 or 33% of your income. And that's the way they do it. But all this horse shit about not letting people live together, and you got to be in a relationship or making love to somebody in order to have a roof over your head. Like they should really use their brains. It should be based on your income. And if I was the decision maker and that situation of you, your mother, and your brother came across my desk, I would be simple. Great. Let's make a motion or some kind of law that would allow for the rent to be adjusted fairly, not gouge your brother, but adjust it fairly because he's making a larger amount of money. And then move on from there. But like that's too easy for them, right? If they rectify that problem, what happens?
Well, I just wanted to jump in too. I mean, we've said this before several times, I feel, but kind of two things. Like here in BC, and again, I don't know about other provinces, but here in BC, we've talked about this before, Brent, is in the 80s up to the early 90s, disability. There used to be disability pensions. So it was a guaranteed disability pension. If you had a medically assessed, if you were medically assessed as having a disability, you were
designated,
medically designated. Yes, you would qualify for a disability pension, a guaranteed amount that wasn't going to be clawed back. It was a guaranteed amount, and so everybody got it. So you had that. One aspect of it was an autonomy thing of like everybody got it, so it was autonomy. It respected the autonomy of the individual, right? So that's the first thing I have to say about that. And then the other part that I was going to say is like again here in BC, and I know this because I listened in on the BC Human Rights Commissioner here. They gave a seminar, an online seminar one time, and I signed on to it and I listened to it, and they said right now in BC the only grounds for any discrimination, that you can give for any discrimination is is for things like sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. For rents, like
Okay.
as you have to have the you have to it was sorry, I don't know I've lost my train of thought. Maybe because I'm too hot.
You're good, buddy.
Yeah, but
No, you're good. It's exactly what you're saying. It should all. What it boils down to is to make it simplified for everybody. It has to be about your income and your needs. So you have to have the wraparound. I call them wraparound services. Other people don't like that term. Find me another term. But you have to have those wraparound services because there's so many different defining issues, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sitting here right now as a person that used to be on ODSP, and look, my body's working, right? There's some people that have issues here. There's some people that have developed, like I have a little bit of a scoliosis. I had spinal meningitis when I was 3 months old, okay? So there's people that have issues like that. And then I went to work like an idiot. And I say that with the greatest of pride, but I went to work like an idiot because after being let go from that, I'm now back at square one. And I'm back finding myself under different programs and different rules going on. For example, the issues that I have are all dealt with, even though they're health issues, they're all dealt with by the city on one level or another, not the province, right? And the problem is all the city-run issues now are being fielded by the province. So you're waiting 2 to 4 weeks longer for any action upon anything you need, as opposed to just like the old days where you went into the office, saw your worker, did it all up, done deal, right? Mm-hmm. Now you have to go through the Minister of Social Services for the province, but it's called it's called Ontario Works here, but it's a city-run program, right? Like none of it makes sense. So they need the support for all the varying issues, and people that need some help with the housing. One great tip, other than call your local constituency office, is there's this thing called the Housing Help Center. And I don't know if you guys have it out there. We have it here in Ontario and in Toronto. We have about 3 or 4 locations. And basically the Housing Help Center is that starting point where somebody can go to start the application process and such. And then those people can handle the case through various city workers, including your local city councilor's office.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is I was going to jump in. Now I remember my brain fart is finished. Is what I was going to say is the source of income. When you talk about source of income, I mean that's it goes back to the whole clawback and the pink unicorn of the clawbacks, right? Is because under BC policy right now, source of income is not considered discriminatory except in issues of tenancy or renter's tenancy. So that's the only grounds of where you can say source of income is discriminatory based on tenancy only, nothing else. And the reason I say that is basically, I mean, so the province is saying yes, that's discriminatory, but yet they're allowing all this shit to happen. Like, they're basically saying, well, you can't rent here if you're not in a relationship, and you can't rent here if you're only making $1,500 a month, and you can't do this, and you can't. It's very discriminatory, right? And yet they're saying source of income is a source of discrimination for tenancy, and yet they violate it like shit all the time. Like I don't understand it.
That's what I had mentioned to the gentleman on the phone. Was I said people who live in who pay market rent under a private landlord or a company, a management company, they can have up to X amount of people they want in a unit. I said, however, many landlords won't allow that anyway. I mean, because they usually say like X amount of people can only be in an apartment. I know that there's like 8 people who live a couple of doors down from me, and there's a 2-bedroom, and they have 8 people living in there. Management knows what's going on, but as long as the rent gets paid and they actually behave and they're behaving themselves, but they're sharing all the rent. They're not in a relationships. They all just they share the rent. But under BC housing, they will not allow that. They would all have to be in a relationship in order to qualify. You know, and they're just
sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but that's the dumbest fucking thing I ever heard in my life. The dumbest thing. You know, when Brent and Sonia were here in Toronto, right? I took them down to this one spot. Everybody knows that it's Dundas Square. It's now going to be renamed Sankova Square or whatever. But I showed them the building, and I really hope that Mayor Olivia Chow and some of the others that we talked to, like Mike Schreiner, Merritt Stiles, I really hope they take a look at this. So I took Brent and Sonia, and I showed them what's known here as the Toronto Public Health Building that's at 277 Victoria Street. And it's directly across the street from City News, which hosts breakfast television here in Toronto and such. And what it is a safe injection site, but outside, you'd think it's a war zone. There's people laying all sprawled out in the street, some people strung out, some people overdosing, and it's through no fault of their own other than being an addict, right? So I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying if this shit is going on right in downtown Toronto at what's known as the Toronto Public Health Building, which means they're the ones that run Toronto Public Health, in front of a media station. Wow. And when has this ever been shown on TV? Very rare, unless somebody's mother is shot, unless something unfortunately happens to a child. This never gets played on the news. So I encourage everybody in that City News building, you know, I'm looking at you right now, take a walk across the street and then let me know if you want to do a show on people that need the help of the community. That's all it is. It's a hand up, not a handout.
Exactly. I would have the camera rolling and talk about lived experience. Like, yeah, I'd be right on it. Yeah. I mean, so that's...
And that's the problem here, though, right? The problem here, and I'm not trying to be a bitch, right? Because that's not what I'm about. I'm about getting the education out there.
Yeah.
But the problem is with the mainstream media, I'm not even yelling at them, right? That's their business. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
The problem is it is run by politics. And those politicians are run by the mega money-making people that pay for their campaigns. So who's the media going to listen to? Are they going to listen to an oligarch that makes billions of dollars? Or are they going to listen to Dan and Brent and I almost forgot your name. That's right there on the screen, Neil. But you know what I mean? Like,
I'm glad I'm not the only one having a brain fart today.
I got brain farts every day, man. I think I invented the word, right? But when these people go on TV, for example, and say like the TTC is the safest and the best, our TTC guy, the CEO guy, and then I'll be brief and shut my pie so you can get on with your day. But our TTC guy is retiring. I think it's the end of August or beginning of August or something. He makes, I don't know, 6 figures, 350, 450, a million. I don't know what he makes. But just imagine what he's getting. He's leaving now. There's an Eglinton Crosstown project that's been underway for about 4 decades now that hasn't been complete yet. There is homeless crisis. There's all of this going on within transportation, within the TTC. You saw the streetcar system when you were here. Probably not the funnest thing to ride with somebody sitting in the corner going like this, right?
Yeah.
So we need these people to focus on fixing the actual issues and not about keeping their friends happy when they're leaving after retirement. When I left the city of Toronto, I'll tell you straight, I got paid $313. When this guy leaves the city of Toronto, he's probably going to get like $1 million a year for each year of service, which probably totals $10 million. Wow. So here I am busting my ass out there in the community like each and every one of you do every single day. And this is the thanks you get. So you got to take it to them. You just got to keep going with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found the transportation really amazing in Toronto compared to out here. It was the difference between it's like a cloudy day versus a nice sunny day. Definitely one of the things I want to explore when I do get the opportunity of coming back there and into Toronto, Dan, and definitely I want to check out the streetcars. That's one of the ones that unfortunately we ran out of time to do that. And of course come to visit
you might be on your own, because even I don't like riding the streetcars. I mean, seriously, it's gotten really to the point on the streetcars and trains where and it's been an ongoing issue. We've all known about it, right? We have great people here named Lorraine Lamb, Diane McNally Chan McNally, Kathy Crow, various people that have worked in the community for decades, right? And the transit issue has been like, shove them underground, let them go there. So there's been stabbings, there's been beatings, And you never hear about it until a month later. They don't want to put the fear of God in everybody, because if they tell you, yeah, buddy just got stabbed at the subway stop you use every day,
Right.
you're probably not going to want to get on the subway that day, right? So you don't tend to hear about this shit until like a month later. And that's what we got to change, the transparency of it all, because we all know nothing's going to be perfect all the time. Mm-hmm. But if we got people in there that know what they're doing and actually give a shit about the community, just watch on August 1st at 12 p.m. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. I'll tune in. I'll tune in.
Oh, definitely. I'll tune in too. I mean, as a as a tourist, I mean, yeah, I mean, that would be something that I would want to see cleaned up really fast, because it wouldn't be welcoming for me to think and come to check out the TTC and then the streetcar. I mean, I want to go on the streetcar just to say I've been on it. I saw it go by when I was there several times up and down, especially when I had to go to the laundromat. That was an interesting area, actually. I love those little townhouses that were right there, right across from the laundromat there, Dan. It was an interesting area. And
did you find a streetcar named Desire, though? That's what I want to know.
Desire?
No, I don't think you're gonna find a streetcar named Desire down there. No, and I mean that with all due respect, right? It's really not the fault of the TTC. It's really not the fault of council that's there right now. It's a combination of everything that's been let go over the years, right? And there's nothing really, like, I mean, you see a stabbing happen, what are you going to do? You're going to step in the middle of a knife or a gun or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, it's just a combination of issues that have compiled on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other. So you got to start hitting each problem nail on the head as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's basically,
but yeah, I wouldn't do my laundry in that area, brother. No way, Jose.
We've reached the end of the show already, Brent, so we can do closing comments.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, everyone that's been tuning into our shows and since the beginning of time, I hope you're enjoying the content that we're putting out on a regular basis, and continue to subscribe, like, and share, and tune into the podcast where you find it available. Like I always say at the beginning of the shows, the content we put out, I find it's very informative. People that I hear in the community that I run against from time to time, even on our journey that Sonia and I took on the train, people were actually tuning into our show while we were traveling, watching our segment where it was about a day, maybe a day and a half behind, but they were following along because they were enjoying the content that we were putting out there. But they were also going back and looking at previous shows and saying, wow, I'd love to come on to the show and be a guest. Well, for those that have been reaching out, reach out to us. I mean, we'll get you on. There is going to be a little bit of a break. I want to make that programming announcement. Neil knows about this already. There's going to be a little bit of a break for about a couple of weeks in August. Could be maybe 2.5 weeks, but we'll keep you informed on that. Where I'm just going to do a little bit of downtime for myself. I don't plan on going anywhere. Maybe just being like a little tourist within my own community. I might venture out maybe a little bit outside of my community. So a little bit of breaking with Brent. Could be a little travel segment. Maybe coffee time.
Coffee time.
Who knows,
I like those.
Who knows where I'm going to be popping up, but I'm not doing any big adventure, not for a while. I guess that may be a question mark. People thinking, where's he going with this? So I'm working on that. Yes, and it will be a travel segment. I'll give you a little hint on that, but I'm working on that part. But in the meantime, the show is still open for the month of July, beginning of August. I'm going to keep that day open, Dan, just in case. I'm going to throw it out there to you, just in case.
We'll leave it open and you get first dibs.
Yeah. I'll leave that.
You know what? In my closing argument, then, that's a great segue, man. We can do that if you want. We can do that if you want, because for everybody watching, right? I don't know how clearly you can see this, but that says endorsement of nomination.
There you go.
Wow.
Dan is not playing around anymore. I'm done playing these pussyfoot games with people. So I'm just telling you, watch August 1st, and you're going to get all you need to know. And I encourage everybody else to, even if you can't get that involved to run for office or what have you, every little bit helps. whether it's giving a bottle of water to a homeless person, whether it's joining Brent and Neil here on the program, or whether it's just saying hello to somebody on the street. I just got a little bit of crazy in me. So I'm ready and I'm going to do it. I'm telling you right now, August 1st, you're going to have the time of your fucking life.
Good.
I look forward to August 1st, Dan, and hearing the announcement. Definitely the door is open. You're definitely more than welcome to come on to the show and give that announcement. So I'm going to leave that opportunity with you, or option. Definitely reach out before August 1st, obviously, to let us know.
I'll book it.
Yeah. Neil can book you in for sure, and whatever time works good for you. And
yeah, I was gonna do it on a Twitter space, but I didn't think that would go over too fucking well.
No.
And to each person out there, really, all jokes aside, this is the last thing I'll say. I apologize if my language comes across as brash, or if it affects anybody or triggers anybody. I really do apologize. This is the language I've been using my life. I'm trying to clean it up a little bit. So I'm trying to limit myself to 10 per day. But, all jokes aside, I just hope everybody stays informed and stay safe, man.
I'm keeping track, Dan. It's $1 per swear. So I think you're up to about 223 right now.
I
don't know.
I can double it.
I can't see the chat, so I don't know if my mom's listening. I might get my ass.
No, your mom is listening. She's on the chat right now.
Oh shit! I mean, sorry, Mom. Yeah, no.
There we go again.
All jokes aside, thank you to you guys for what you do. Thank you to my mom for getting me this far, because God knows I shouldn't have made it past fucking no more than 20 years old, right? And just keep up what you're doing.
There's another part of a programming announcement, Dan, before I let you go here. Actually, I'm glad that we mentioned about what we're talking about is about that petition that we have going out there. Neil, maybe you could kind of comment regarding that.
I know what you're going to say. Going to say.
There's a little bit of pushback regarding the petition E-5047. I think maybe there was a misunderstanding from some people in the disability community. Nothing against any of you. I love your advocacy. I think that we all work together in our own ways of pushing the narrative of making sure that we have a standard of income. What the e-petition is that it's holding the government to account, and it doesn't matter what level of government it is. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you, Neil, and you can go from there.
Yeah, well, I think there was like you said, we were getting pushback from Twitter. And there was this misunderstanding that the petition that you put out, and I was very careful. Like, I was basically the one that wrote most of it, but I was using your language, the language that you use all the time on the show. I was basically copying and pasting the language that is repeated all the time. That you use all the time, and I basically borrowed your words and I put them on the paper. And and the one ad that I did is like the Spider-Man thing, the Spider-Man quote, or the Uncle Ben thing of with great power comes great responsibility. I take responsibility for that because I'm a Spider-Man lover. So I take take responsibility for that. But the pushback that we were getting is that people think that it was sponsored by the federal NDP for some reason. And we just want to set the record straight that this e-petition was not sponsored by the federal NDP or any other political party for that matter. There's been no interference from any other political party. It was just something that you and I came together, Brent, and we put it out as individuals with disabilities with no input from any federal party or otherwise. So no, it did.
Or any of the wording is nothing to do. No politician told me what to say in the petition on how to word things. So I'm not a politician. So the wording is my wording. It wasn't any influence from any political party telling me, well, it needs to be written this way or that way. What I can say though is parliamentary is that if a petition is very demanding, we're now really emphasize then they sometimes they can turn down petitions. So it's asking nicely of the wording of like of a concern or like however it may
please
be worded.
consider. I mean,
please consider, yes.
Yeah.
And the way to consider is saying, please consider this because people are living in legislated and imposed poverty in Canada. Like, really? How can that be in Canada? They should not even, we shouldn't even have to even put a DURB out there, but we decided to put a DURB out there as a request again, Christopher Freeland, if you're listening to this. I mean, I don't know how many times people need to say that people need help in Canada. I mean, should we be looking after our citizens? So again, that's why the petition is out there. And so I'm really hoping that all the political parties, when they get this petition, I know they have 45 days after it is actually presented into the House. Once we get to 500 signatures, they have time to read it. And I really am hoping that all the political parties will actually agree that, yes, let's proceed with this, let's get the money out. And also, do not tie it to DTC.
Yes.
Because there's a new petition out there actually from, I'm hoping if I get the name wrong, please, I apologize. I believe there's a petition that's out there by Laurel Collins. It's actually, I know that Lisa Marie Barron is actually backing it also. Okay. So thank you, Lisa Marie Barron from the Nanaimo Ladysmith on that. And the petition is out there to basically streamline it so that DTC is not a requirement in order to get the Canada Disability Benefit. And also, it should not be based on the household income. And that is what the federal government wants to try to put into the regulations right now. That's what I'm reading on Twitter, is that they are going to the regulations and they want to base it on the household income. And what did I say earlier in the show, Neil, is that talking to you, and I mentioned to you, Dan, too, is that the BC housing, they want to base everything on the household income. Like, seriously, people, like, this is coming from the federal government. What do we have to do to stop this household income garbage? Like, base it on the individual, not household. And I can tell you from lived experience, I went through trauma. Do you want to talk about my anxiety went through the roof? And no, I didn't have to get medication for it, but my doctor was very concerned for me at the time because I was actually on the verge of losing my housing. Like I had explained earlier in the podcast, like it was like one of us had to go. Yeah. And because it was based on household income. So again, going forward, let's modernize, let's work together from municipal, provincial, federal. Let's listen to lived experience stories, listen to the advocacy organizations. Yes, I know that there's a lot of pushback with organizations. I know the PWD community is chiming in a lot with the disability organizations saying that they're not pushing for, a disability emergency response benefit. Like there's a narrative, whatever the case is. I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of organizations and individuals across country, I think we all want the same thing at the end of the day, is to help citizens. Yeah. So I think if we can all kind of jump into that same big boat and use the oars and work together and achieve, I know we can do this as a country. We can make things better rather than all the infighting going on.
Yeah, like, and just before you sign off, let's acknowledge the pink unicorn behind your head there, because that is why all this stuff still happens, is because pink unicorns are alive and well.
Well, it's just exasperating for me right now. Like I know I've mentioned many times, I know we went a little bit over time on our show here. I apologize for people, they think you're ending comment and, here we go, goes Brent, right? But I just wanted to make a point here is that it's like dividing disabled people against disabled people. Well, it's like saying if you want to have this housing, cheap housing, you need to follow our guidelines, our policy. Oh, you want to keep living in market housing? Hey, knock yourself out, but don't complain to us that if you put yourself into harm's way of not having enough income. Well, I'm sorry. So the government, so you need to listen to lived experience, right? I mean, everybody wants to have cheap housing, but it should be based on the individual. Let's tie it to the individual, not the household. And let's do some kind of vacancy control where the tenant leaves. Like, I'll give you an example. Sonia and I move out of this this place, this building, the landlord would be lovely. They'd be so happy. They'd be cracking open the champagne. Why? Because they can actually get a lot more money for this unit. I know the people who lived upstairs, they moved out and we got new tenants and they're making our life a living hell right now. Are we wanting to move right now? Yeah, I'd love to move right now, but I know that if we move, we would not be able to find cheap housing. We'd put ourselves into a really bad situation because market housing is so expensive. Can we get into BC housing? No, we can't get into BC housing because we don't meet their criteria. So what do we do? You know what I mean? Like it's you need to either raise the rates to a livable income, like a standard.
Two PWD walk into a bar, Brent. It's kind of like that. The joke.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to come to some kind of common ground here with the government and the individuals and figure something out, because housing is not going to get any better. I've seen it over decades. I remember when I was a kid and I went back down memory lane delivering newspapers, and my mom used to say, Brent, the customers are waiting to get to their newspaper. Why are you? Yeah, because she was actually going to do some grocery shopping and she passed by me on the way, and I'm parked on the side of the road. I'm reading through the newspaper because I was looking at bicycle parts under another section, and I flipped over the wind. It was kind of windy out, and it blew the page forward, and it went under rentals. And I guess it got me intrigued. I'm looking at rentals, what the price of housing was for a bachelor, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, a bachelor, $320, a 1 bedroom. It ranged from $380 up to $420. My God, where in my building right now, I can use my building, and it's one of the cheaper ones. In my building right now, the people who moved upstairs, $1,750. What happened here, folks?
For a 1 bedroom, right?
1 bedroom. Like, yeah. I can tell you when Neil, and people know the story. When Sonia and I lived in Langley, before we had to move to Victoria, 1 bedrooms, they were still reachable for people. 2 bedrooms were still reachable. They've now skyrocketed. Our place that we rented, the rent had actually gone up. Like, we got a good deal at the time, which we thought was a good deal, but it was one of those situations where, like a clause in place, because if we didn't take the unit, well, we'd been in trouble, big and a mess, a housing mess. But that unit is now, like, when we moved out, it was $1,775. It was going for. It's now going for $2,600. And that was a couple months ago. I read again. Now it's going for $3,200. What? $3,200, folks.
Wow.
What happened?
Don't you just want to punch yourself in the face every time you hear that, man? See, it's actually the opposite here. And I can see that Neil wants to go have dinner, but like here, they were just said by my good friend Tom Hayes. I have a friend, Tom Hayes, who used to be a news reporter, and he does his own thing now for media. And I don't even remember where I was going with this, because oh my God. Every time I hear this kind of shit, you lose your train of thought. You have those brain farts. You just gibber, right? Bottom line is, I am not part of any political party either. I've never had a party membership. And if I thought that these two guys here for any second whatsoever were doing something for one singular party, I would tell them both to kiss my ass. So all of you guys keep believing whatever narrative you want. Just get involved and make your own informed decisions. Don't listen to people that are telling you things about these people. Go out and search it out yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Sorry for that last train of thought lost, but it is what it is. This shit happens when you.
I get that way too. I'll get on a rant and I'll just kind of run with it, because I just get so pissed off because things that make sense, it's like everything's backwards. And then I see this Sonia, when I said that, I said $3,200. She goes, "What?" They're too freaked. And then I turn around, and then the prices now drop down again. It's like they're gouging. It's like, and here's the other part, is that there are places, Dan, that they won't even rent to PWD. Like, they'll say, oh, well, your income has to be $5,000 minimum per month and we'll rent to you. I know, I saw the place getting built when I was a kid. It was a 1990s building, and there's just nothing special about it. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you got another place down the road from there saying, yeah, no problem, we'll rent to you. I mean, a corporate... I just remembered. It was my friend Tom Hayes there that stated this morning on his 1 minute newsreel that, we were up to like $3,000 a month here or whatever. And he goes, and now it's gone down to only $2,775. Like, what the fuck? Get a hold.
bottom line is help each other, reach out, let Neil go have some dinner. And, you know, I want to come out to BC one time because I just think that rule is just the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life.
Oh, it's really messed up, Dan, and I enjoy our conversations. And I look forward to continuing on this conversation where we left off very, very soon. Thank you.
You guys will hear from me by August 1st, and thank you guys.
So,
exactly.
So again, with great power comes great responsibility, said Uncle Ben. Spider-Man's Uncle Ben. So everybody go out and sign the e-petition. It's E-5047. E-5047. Just Google it, look it up, and sign it. We're past the halfway point of getting official statuses of being recognized. I don't know what the term is, but it's 500 signatures. We'll get it to the point of being have to be presented.
On June 26th is when the petition started. It's running for 120 days. So we're actually almost just at the halfway mark. It's impressive, but what'd be more impressive is to get it past the 500 mark. I mean, more the merrier. I know we can do it. So July, I put on Twitter before as a goal. I said, let's get it to 1,000 signatures by the end of July. If we can get it to 500, now that I'd be very happy.
Yeah.
Why? Because actually looking out for fellow citizens across the country for PWD that are medically assessed and designated as citizens of persons with disabilities in Canada. Let's take care of one another. Let's look out for one another. If you're asking for help on mutual aid, I mean, if you're in the position of helping somebody out, when you're seeing something like, if you're able to help out like $10, $20, whatever it is, whatever the circumstance, I mean, just reach out to that person. I mean, and I'm not promoting mutual aid on any aspect of anybody in general at all. But I do know that there are a few individuals for sure that their circumstance is not very good. I know one person in particular, and I normally don't do this, like promoting a person, to throw it out there. Alan Davies, I hear you, man. And he's one of our regular panelists that comes on the show. He recently injured his shoulder really bad. He can't lift his arm properly. He's trying to make stuff. If you're able to help Alan out, or maybe if you can make arrangements, if you live in his area, if you need some help with some house cleaning or cooking, maybe, Dylan, I'm just offering maybe some suggestions, somebody who's in the area that can help him out. That way, or maybe throw him a couple bucks if you're able to.
Yeah, I think he is going to try to get some sort of care aid help, but it's going to take him a while though.
Yeah, he's on a waiting list.
He's on a waiting list for it because, of course, you have to wait for all that stuff, right?
all the red tape, and I guess that's a good segue with that, is all this red tape, everybody. All this red tape needs to be abolished, and let's get things fixed up for people. But it's been a great pleasure having you on today, Dan. I know we chimed into a lot of stuff, and Brent gone to a
I have been following the chat too, so if I appear distracted, it's because I was looking at the chat. But yeah, there's been lots of good conversation in the chat, but I keep going back and forth to see if anybody's saying anything, but I have been following it, so thanks everybody for tuning into that.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning into our chat session today too, and special thanks to Dan for joining us on today. It's been a great pleasure. Anyone who would like to hear of any programming suggestions, like any guests that you would love to see on the show going forward, we'll do our very best to try to get them on. I can't guarantee. I know that there's some prominent people that a few people have mentioned that they would love me to get on. I don't know if I can actually make that happen. Neil, I think he knows where I'm going with that. I know Dan probably does, but I'll try. I do have one guest coming on actually next week, and he's been on here before, and he's actually the shadow minister for social development and poverty reduction in British Columbia. He's with the BC United Party, so I will promote that out there. MLA Dan Davies for for up in he's up in Peace River North.
The Shadow Minister.
Yeah, and
Marvel.
That's what his title is now, and they have a lot of forest fires are going on up in that area. So I convened with a phone call yesterday just to confirm that. And I didn't know that how bad it is up that way with forest fires, and so people like just be careful with camping. There's campfire ban that's actually in effect as of today across British Columbia, and so that's going to hopefully keep things under control. Take care of yourselves. Do the best you can. Stay hydrated in the heat. If we get another heat wave, until our next show, stay tuned. Watch out for any programming announcements. If you want to be a guest, reach out to us. If you want to donate, reach out to us. If please subscribe, like, share, all the above, yada yada. Have a great day. Thanks everyone. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.